And right now, I would give anything to run my fingers through his feathers.
There are, as I'm sure you're no doubt very much aware, quite a few movies based on Marvel Comics. If you can walk into an Odeon and not see a costumed hero staring down at you from a poster, you've probably accidentally stepped into a time portal like Gary Sparrow from Goodnight Sweetheart and ended up in 2007 or before then even. However, there were Marvel movies before the MCU marketing juggernaut sputtered to life and crushed every other cinematic genre experience into the dirt. And the first one of these wasn't the Hulk, Captain America, or even Spider-Man. No, it was a movie upon which this game was based. Incredibly, it is Howard the Duck. That's baffling, right? I mean, there were a few serialised Captain America shorts in the cinema before this came out, but this was the first theatrical feature-length Marvel movie. Think how much merch Peter Parker's red and blue alter ego shifts, and instead of him hitting the cinema screens first, we got a movie based on an alcohol-swilling, frisky, anthropomorphic waterfowl. A decidedly C, D, E, or even F tier Marvel character. The movie was a 1986 live-action affair about the eponymous alien quacker who has been dragged from his part of the universe to Earth during the mid-80s. Yes, past a duck lady with mammalian breasts enjoying her bath as he was about to have a wank. Imagine that scene in your Lego games, eh? Howard has found himself in this Mallard malady thanks to the cosmic experimentations of a team of scientists led by Dr. Jennings. Jennings and his team have not only brought Howard to Cleveland, but also a being known as the Dark Overlord, who immediately possesses Jennings, which makes him into a truly despicable creature. Art imitating life, eh, Jeffrey Jones? Can Howard adjust to his new surroundings, or even better, find a way home? Spoilers, no, not really, and yes. He does this with the assistance of bumbling dweeb Phil Blumblebert, played by Tim Robbins, and also the cool chick lead singer of local band Cherry Bomb, Beverly Switzler. One of the most infamous parts of the movie is the near bestial activity that the movie teases between Bev and Howard, but wisely it backs away from this at the last moment. Actress Leah Thompson, who plays Beverly, had a bit of form going into this, having tried to cop off with her own son in the Back to the Future franchise, and probably should be on the same register as old Jeffrey, if you ask me. Howard the Duck was produced by the then red-hot Lucasfilm, coming off their Star Wars trilogy. It was something George Lucas had wanted to make before Star Wars, as he was a fan of the original comic that was originally created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Val Mayerick in 1973. Incidentally, in the comic, Bev and Howard don't back away from human-duck relations, but well, that's up to her to explain to her parents. Lucas ended up being an executive producer with long-term collaborator Willard Hayek directing. Hayek just sounds like this to me. And well, we know what happened, don't we? It's famously one of the biggest commercial and critical flops of 80s blockbuster cinema. It was nominated for 7 Razzies, won 4 of them, and took a shellacking at the box office, and currently has a 14% approval rate on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics of the movie included slights against the special effects, some of the acting, the weirdly adult elements, and that Howard himself was considered unlikable. Aw, poor Howard. Personally, I have a bit of fondness for it, discovering it on late-night television in the early 1990s. The criticism is, of course, entirely fair, but there is enough magic in there to be watchable. I'd say it's worth a watch still. And here's a question for you. Can you name me a movie that's better that features a down-on-his-luck mutant duck mopping up cum in a sex club? I bet you can't. I would kind of like to watch it if you can, though. And hey, despite this cinematic flop that saw him banish from our screens for many, many years, old Howard is making his way back to the big time thanks to the MCU via cameos in Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers movies, along with an appearance in the Disney Plus TV cartoon What If, where he marries Kat Dennings. If that isn't making a decent comeback and turning things around, I don't know what is. Have you seen Kat Dennings? Howard the Duck, Adventure on Volcano Island is an Activision 1987 adventure and a sort of follow-on from the movie. Howard is back on Earth, as is a vengeful Dark Overlord. The Overlord has decided to kidnap Bev and Phil and lock them away in his volcanic lair, and Howard is very safety conscious and is aware that this probably wouldn't be very good for their health. So he decides to bring his best quack foo to this sulphurous archipelago to free his chums from their wrongful incarceration. Howard is dropped off on the opposite side of the aisle and has to traipse through the fervent jungle towards his goal, which is a microlight aircraft that will enable him to get to the volcano top. And herein lies the problem. Obviously, this opens up questions on why whoever dropped him off on the end of the island didn't just drop him nearer the volcano. They seem to have put him at the furthest possible point away from the volcano. No doubt someone will have a smart-ass response to this, like anytime anyone brings up the Eagles in Lord of the Rings. And of that, of course, I welcome those responses. There wouldn't be much of a game. Shut up. The foliage-laden remote paradise is fraught with various dangers, from potentially dodgy natives to quicksand, which, as I'm sure you're aware of, was an immensely perilous substance back in the 80s, but never has seemed to have been an issue since. Narrow rapids present a unique issue for Howard, unique in the fact that most ducks wouldn't have an issue with surpassing such things. You see, whereas Spider-Man is a man who has the attributes of a spider, Howard is a duck who doesn't even have the attributes of a duck. He can't fly and he can't swim. Sure, most ducks can't speak English, manage girl bands in the 1980s or perform martial arts, but Howard as a superhero, come on man, that's a bit rubbish. To traverse this turbulent current, what Howard has to do is find his propulsion backpack. In a normal game that's had a decent amount of time spent on it, this would probably take up the first couple of levels, but this game helpfully puts it handily on the screen next to your starting point. Just use Howard's incredibly nimble leap to vault the quicksand and you've got it. You can now scoot over the water to the other part of the island and continue your rescue mission, albeit with a bit of resistance from the rapids. The islanders will endlessly spawn from these holes and group cuddle Howard like fellas in Kung Fu, or really good friends that make you want to feel uncomfortable. This, as it would me, will make our protagonist feel very socially awkward and he will die from embarrassment. Be quick to kick the savages in the chin and then starve their tribesmen of oxygen by leaping onto their hidey holes to fill their lungs with sand, and they won't be an issue anymore. Within about 8 minutes of play, you should have reached the aircraft, where following a short sequence in that aircraft, you'll be inside the HQ of the Overlord, dodging falling rocks as you inch your way towards him, preparing to bazooka his face off. That part of the game takes about 2 to 3 minutes if you're stopping to eat a Star Bar halfway through. Yeah, the game is about 10 minutes long. It was released at full price and is short of the most coveted demos of other full price games. In fact, if you put it on the 2 lower difficulty settings, you don't even get the end sequence in the volcano. The game just ends with you aboard the microlight aircraft. On the 2 higher settings, you get that end sequence. The multiple difficulty levels at least expand the gameplay a little bit, I guess, but That's the same game, essentially, just with the end bit chopped off. Is the game at least fun in its short lifespan? It's okay. It plays a bit like Spy vs. Spy 2, or one of those mid-tier 8-bit action adventures like one of the high-tech Hanna-Barbera games such as Top Cat or Yogi and the Greed Monster, but decidedly more blink and you'll miss it, despite those games being a third of the price at launch. It is a little bit difficult for me to recommend Howard the Duck in any of its incarnations, to be honest, on the 8-bit computers, as it's definitely got the air of a rushed licensed game about it. Who knows why this is? I suspect Activision sped up and denied time and money towards the project when they got wind of the movie's likely box office flop potential. Howard the Duck is ducking short, and while I can't say it's foul, I can't hoist in its praises either. Crash gave it a 61% in June 1987, saying it was a slightly above average game, which has sprung from a dreadful movie. Commodore User gave it a 5 out of 10 in February 1987. They reckoned that the game could and should have been a lot better, and that you should pass the orange sauce. I think they mean they want to eat him. Amstrad Action didn't enjoy Howard the Duck's adventure either in their issue 53. They gave it a rather miserable 36%. So that's Howard the Duck then, who's had a few appearances in some more modern titles thanks to the success of the MCU since. But the consensus appears to be that his original adventure, much like the movie, is a load of old duck crap. If you say it that quickly, it works, right? Right? Ugh, oh dear. Like, subscribe, and thanks, bye.